So this is the first time I'm actually doing a couch interview away from the foundation, and I'm delighted to be with Colin Jones, the esteemed photographer, on his couch up here in London. And Colin, you started out as a dancer for the Royal Ballet, and then you became a photographer. That's a very strange sort of transformation to make. How did this go about?
Well, I didn't really, as a dancer with the Royal Ballet, I didn't really enjoy it. One of the problems I had was musicality, and if you are not musical, it's pointless in a way. A lot of dancers, famous dancers, were really not so musical.
You told me a story when I met you a few weeks back about how you were on tour with the ballet and you saw something that made you think you should be a photographer.
Yes.
Can you just talk about that?
Yes, that was when we went on these massive tours with the Royal Ballet. We went to Hong Kong, danced there, and then on to the Philippines. One of the weekends, we were invited to a party, and it was Imelda Marcos and her husband. We used to swap tables, and I sat next to Imelda Marcos. She came and sat next to me, and we were overlooking Manila Bay, which it's quite a beautiful bay, and because they had this beautiful house and gardens, and in the distance there was a smoke arising from the far end of the bay, and I said to her, what is that smoke? And she said, oh, we're burning off some of the ghetto. And I thought, I must go and see that. So next morning, we all had our own chauffeurs. So I asked him to take me down to where, and he was a bit reluctant to take me. So I said, well, get me as near as you can. And then I saw what they were doing. They were setting light to the ghetto with people still living in their huts. So it sort of, I thought about the ballet, and I thought about the way people were treated, and I sort of changed my politics in a way. The ballet was very right-wing.
So did you go back and photograph the slums of...
Yes, I did.
Oh, the ghetto?
I bought my first camera in Australia. And why I bought it is because all the other dancers had cameras, and every time we went anywhere, they were always photographing. And I thought, well, I'll join them, and I did. And so I bought that camera. Then I went on tour to South Africa. We were in Johannesburg, and we then, from Johannesburg, we danced in Durban. We were with the Afrikaners. They looked after us, and because they were the opposite, anti-apartheid, and we got involved in the riots in Durban, 3 of us.
And by this time you had a camera and you were photographing.
Yeah.
For you, the camera was a way of putting some justice behind the inequalities you witnessed around the world.
Yes, I think so. Yes. It's one of the things that photographers seem to do is they go to the far end of poverty, and they make that the star subject, which is true in a way. But to do photography where everything is hunky-dory is not so interesting, I think.
So you're best known for your pictures taken in the UK of people like miners,
Yes.
the steelworkers and the Black House.
Yes.
How did you come across these subjects?
When we were driving from, the first time, the best ones I saw was when we were going towards Sunderland, because we danced in the theatre there in Sunderland, which was, a pretty rough place. And passing it, I saw these coal slag heaps and the lorries coming and dumping the waste, and these people, coal scavengers. And it's quite early on. And I started to photograph that. And when you're a dancer, you have to do so many classes, and, there is a discipline, and I used to miss classes, go and photograph.
So you literally were squeezing in your photography into your ballet timetable.
Yes.
And at what point did you become a full-time photographer and start to go on assignment?
That's when I met Michael Pato. Michael Pato was a photographer, and he was always photographing the ballet, and he was very fond of my wife, Lynn Seymour, and he said, I showed him some of the pictures I'd taken. I used to print them in my bedroom in Blackheath. He liked them, and he said, why don't you become a photographer? I went to, there was a guy called Dennis Hackett at the Observer, and I showed him the pictures with Michael Pato there. And Dennis Hackett said, don't ring us, we'll ring you, which was typical. But then we were in Nottingham or somewhere dancing, and I got a telegram, and the stage doorman brought it up to the dressing room, and it was, that was a form of communications in those days, telegrams. And it said, would you be able to do 6 months work on the Observer starting a certain date? I just signed a new contract with the Royal Ballet with Nanette de Valois, and I went to see her and said, look, I've been offered this job as a photographer for the Observer. Can you release me from my contract? And she said, certainly.
So most of would you say that most of your best known pictures were done at the time of you being a ballet dancer, the pictures on the slag heaps?
Yes.
And then were you able to add to that folio with your assignments?
Yes, I did. As soon as I got to the Observer, they sent me back out there in 1963. And that's when I did the Grafters. But one of the best assignments I went on was the dockers in Liverpool, because they were all working on the lump. So they used to go in working gangs. I got in with the dockers, and they sort of dressed me up as a docker with cameras, and I got into the docks. And if I'd been found out by the owners, they would have gone bananas. The dockers were great fun to be with. I mean, they were, you know, that's where they said to me, in the docks, it's Christmas every day. And I said, and I tried to work it out, and he said, well, we get televisions, we get cameras, and it's all nicked. Booze. And it's, you know, there were places in Liverpool where it was sold in the black market.
Were they published in the Observer then?
Yes.
And was there repercussions from them being published?
Not from the owners, no. Because the owner, if it, there was no comeback because it was true, and it's very difficult to argue against the truth. And that's when I first started doing coal mining pictures. The owners, if they knew I was going down a pit, would go bananas.
So you were literally smuggled into the mines?
Yes. Yeah, yes. Once I got down there, you had to stay the whole shift, so you were stuck in the mine for 6 hours.
And were you working for the Observer again at this point?
I sort of working on my own, really. I started it with them, and I carried on doing it because I thought there aren't many photographs of miners working underground, because it was taboo. To get some visuals, I had to break the rules, and I didn't really regret it, breaking the rules.
And can you tell us about how you went about shooting the Black House and how that project transpired?
That was, the Black House was another assignment where I was commissioned by the Sunday Times to go and find out who was doing all the mugging. You know, it's like in London, and I was with Peter Gilman, and we couldn't get into any organisation, black organisation. We were non gratis as far as the black community because we were white. We were the media. We went to several places to see if we could get in or get some photographs and hear what they had to say. And in the end, there was a place in the Holloway Road, and it was run by Herman Edwards, and we kept knocking on the door trying to get in. And then he let us in, and we got in, and I started to photograph. And the first, we did about 10 days. In those days, the assignments were much longer. I mean, it was the height of that type of photography where they would spend more money to get the detail. There was a lot of competition between the newspapers, the Times, and anyway, I got some pictures in the end, and they ran it in the Sunday Times, but they didn't call it the Black House. They called it I Blame Britain. So in a funny sort of way, Herman, who ran this hostel, he was trying to get them, the kids, lawyers and help, because one boy there got 6 months for stealing a bottle of milk off the doorstep of somehow. He got caught. But the police in those days used to beat them up. And nobody knew that. And it didn't, it's...
Was that revealed in the article that went
yes,
in the Sunday Times?
Yes, I think so. Yes. I've got a copy of it.
And was there a lot of response to that article when it was published?
Yes. Yeah. Everybody wanted to run it. And they did, they used pictures from it. The Black House, my first show, was at the Photographers Gallery. It used to be in Leicester Square. Do you remember?
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
So when you look back at your life as a photographer, has it been one that you've really enjoyed, do you think?
I never thought of it, my work as a success. Basically, it was just recording history, I suppose.
So thank you, Colin.
That's okay.
Yeah, very good.